Welcome to Muffin Talk. Today my visitor is Father Kevin Waldie. We come to St. Peter and Paul.
That's a great feast. One of the things is that in the New Testament, obviously, we've got great witness to Saints Peter and Paul. Paul is obviously a great writer, a very talented man, a powerful man, but a man who knew his own mind as well. You know, and he wasn't frightened to step up and face St. Peter, because St. Peter was a bit amused at the fact that this man suddenly popped up who'd been the great persecutor, you know, and then he's now saying that I've had a vision too, I've had an apocalypse whereby the Lord, the risen Lord, revealed to me that I'm going to be the apostle to the Gentiles. And so St. Peter then becomes the apostle to the Jews, you see. And I think the Acts of the Apostles does it beautifully to give those two characters a real focus and also to give them a role to play in the early church. Now, when you go back, say, into the Gospels, you see Peter's role, all right. And that's the one, you know, he denies Jesus 3 times, and then you get the classic example in the end of John's Gospel where Jesus asks him 3 times, do you love me, do you love me, do you love me? And that balances the denial element. But you see then there's a humanness about St. Peter, and someone who comes from up country, you know, Galilee, from the backwaters, if you like, but then who is given the keys of the kingdom. And this is the thing that you suddenly hit upon, is that there's a very ordinary man who becomes a great one, who is given power and authority. But whose power and authority is it? It's God's, but handed through Jesus. And I think then when you look at the beginning of the Acts of the Apostles, you suddenly see the first 12 chapters or so are dominated by Peter and the speeches he makes. What then comes through a little later is the fact that Paul is going to balance that in some way, and he's going to deliver a number of speeches and perform miracles as well.
And why are they on one day? Because when you say they're balanced,
because I think it has
because of that.
We are the Church Catholic, and I think that's the idea that these two foundational figures stand alongside each other. One who is specifically Jewish, the other who came from the Jewish background but then became the apostle to the whole world, because the word Gentiles comes from the word in Greek ethne, which means nations, you see. And so ad gentes in Latin means to the world, basically, to the peoples of the world. Because there's one nation over there that was the chosen nation, and then there's all the others. So you're either in or you're out. Whereas in the Catholic Church, everyone's in, so that the message is universal or Catholic. And therefore, when you find in the biblical text these two incredible characters, you suddenly realize, yes, they are the force at the beginning, the early days of the church. And what the Acts of the Apostles does to help us understand that is to almost make them mirror images of Jesus. So just as Jesus performed miracles and spoke in long sermons or speeches or had lots of sayings, so therefore in the Acts of the Apostles, Peter and Paul, because it's not actually all the apostles, it's just 2 of them in actual fact that come to the fore, and each of them in a special way speaks these wonderful sermons or speeches that address the issues of the early church. And you can see then when Paul writes his letters, and when you hear him speak in the Acts of the Apostles, it's the same man who's being remembered. And Luke might give him slightly different forms of speech, much more formalized than the letters are. But what you see immediately is a character that you want to know, that you see has the power of the word and is fully in love with Jesus Christ. And I think that's what Peter and Paul do. even though they show their human side, they are particularly on the way to holiness. And that's the great thing that the Acts of the Apostles does. And that's why we constantly call upon it, because it gives witness. Now, you might say, well, Paul's a pretty dominant character in all of this too. Why doesn't he get a special feast day of his own in a way? But I think you need to have the two together to illustrate just what the New Testament does to bring you into their sphere of thought and faith and action and being on mission.
And maybe it's also that what you said, it's maybe the connection between the old world and the new world.
Very much. I'm liking the word connection now, because I think that in Catholicism, the notion of the church, or as it was in the Old Testament, the kahal, means those who have been assembled. And the New Testament's got a wonderful word for speaking of this, the koinonia, which means fellowship or partnership or communion. And I think that really sums up what it is to celebrate the feasts of the church as well, because it's about understanding the unity that binds us, and who stands at the centre of it for us but Christ, the Son of God, the Word of God. And there are lots of titles that can be applied to him, like Son of Man. And so that then tells you again that he came in the flesh. And so the most extraordinary record of God's coming close to us is in what is spoken about with regards to Jesus of Nazareth. And, I think that's the thing, that when you start reading the text of the New Testament, you're wowed by the way in which it brings you into a theological mindset, but also into a prayerful one as well. And that's why I think sometimes, I'm a scholarly person, but I'm a spiritual one as well. And so I want people to recognize that studying the Bible doesn't take them out of their spirituality, but it just enriches it. And studying people like Saints Peter and Paul, and then having the Feast Day of the Sacred Heart, for instance, that really brings you into the realm of biblical writing, which is really a reflection of where the people of God are at various stages of God's plan. And that's the thing, this is all about God's plan and calling various people into action.
Out there, heroic peace is calling. In the bonds of love we meet. For the world a new day dawning and shine.